Hello, friends. I have to ask, is this the best entry into the trilogy? When this movie came out, I was seeing so many TikToks about how people were so disappointed with this movie. I watched X and I watched Pearl for the first time before watching Maxine, and I have some thoughts. Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back. It's your movie buddy here, ready to talk about another movie on the shortening list of movies that I need to catch up on. Whether you're a longtime subscriber, follower, or a new face, I am thrilled to have you here. If you're looking for detailed plot breakdowns, you won't find them here, but stick around for my spoiler-free thoughts and honest opinions, usually on the latest releases, but right now I'm just trying to get back on track. If you're here with me on YouTube, you can find timestamps in the video description to jump straight to the sections that you're most interested in. Before you check out the timestamps, or if you're just going to stay locked in with me, just to be safe, please consider this your spoiler warning for X and Pearl. New reviews drop every Friday, so hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Spotify to stay updated. So grab your popcorn, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, and let's get into today's episode on Maxine. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minx finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. As always, I want to get into the themes of the film, or at least my take on it. If you've seen the previous two films in the franchise, then you know there's a lot of death and violence. But what really sets these movies apart is how they take their time with the characters, and Maxine is no exception. This film explores some heavy ideas like saving yourself, dealing with trauma, and chasing success through resilience. There's a lot of really interesting ideas to talk about, but I'm going to keep rocking with what I've been rolling with lately in the last few episodes, and I'm just going to combine this section with character development. So let's talk about saving yourself, not relying on or counting on anyone else to save you. There is so much to unpack here, but we don't have the time, and I don't have the retention rate, so I'm just going to try to keep it short. Maxine saved herself during the events of X. No one came to rescue her. She did that. And we love her for it. Now moving on to Maxine. Women are being murdered all around her, but she's still dealing with the trauma of her past. She saved herself, and in her mind, they can save themselves. Now this is where we're going to start talking about character development, without spoiling anything, of course, so bear with me if I'm being a bit vague. Let's just say Maxine starts off kinda passive when it comes to the overall story. Again, she feels like these people can save themselves, just like she did. Then as the story progresses, let's just say she knows what she has to do and she finds it in herself to get it done. Moving on to the visuals. This movie is gorgeous. One thing that stood out immediately to me is the way Maxine opens, mirroring the start of X and Pearl. Okay, there is a little something before the movie really starts, but if you know, you know. All three films open up with these massive doors. In X and Pearl, it was the barn doors, and in Maxine, it's the sliding elephant doors of Warner Brothers Stage 15 in Burbank. I think the visual continuity is striking and just another interesting way to tie the trilogy together. If you're watching the episode on your phone, laptop, or wherever you YouTube or Spotify, then you might have noticed the grainy texture in the screenshots. If you caught my episode on this year's Immaculate, then you know we talked about the texture of that movie as well. For Maxine, the texture is a little detail that really adds to the gritty LA 80s vibe, and it works so well. Another thing that works, for me anyway, are the ratio changes. I really liked seeing the switch from home video, cassette, VCR, camcorder type ratio versus the full shots that we usually see. I checked online and it says the ratio is 2.391, so it goes from that to a more square-ish 4:3. It really adds to the visual storytelling. It's interesting and it feels like it adds more authenticity to the era of the film. Onto the acting, and pardon me if I talk a little bit slow, I am trying my best to pronounce everybody's name correctly. This cast is incredible. Elizabeth Debicki, Halsey, Kevin Bacon, Michelle Monaghan, Bobby Cannavale, Giancarlo Esposito. I mean, this cast is fantastic. Everyone does a great job in this movie. Elizabeth as director Elizabeth Bender is perfect. She's convincing in the role, and I want to say she's definitely standing on business, but you know who's really standing on business? Giancarlo as the best manager, Teddy Knight. What an interesting character. He's definitely one that I would say brought more to the character than what was on paper. He really brought him to life, and it honestly just seemed like he was having so much fun filming this movie. Speaking of fun, Kevin Bacon as John Labatt is stellar. He seems like he's really leaning into this wild, off-the-rails, colorful character, and you can tell he's having a blast. I do wish Michelle Monaghan and Bobby Cannavale had more screen time because they're both standout actors. They bring authority, desperation, and humor to the movie, and it all works so well within the story. You know her, you love her. She is a star, Miss Mia Goth. I'm not gonna lie, I've known about her for a long time, but I've never actually watched anything she's been in, mostly because they're really just not my type of movie. But then I watched Infinity Pool, and there was a lot going on there. And for more of my thoughts on that movie, you can listen to that episode on Spotify. I'll leave a link below if you're watching on YouTube and you're interested. But anyway, I think she's incredible in that movie. And then last month, I watched X and Pearl for the first time, and I was blown away. Put her in everything. She is phenomenal, and she has quickly become one of my favorite actresses. As Maxine, Mia Goth brings an incredible depth and edge to the screen. She's such an interesting character, and after the events of X, she's tough. She's honestly a total badass. Earlier in the episode, I mentioned dealing with trauma, so not only does Mia bring an intensity and hardness to the role, but she just as easily brings that trauma to the surface. It's the explosiveness of the character, but it's also the nuance and silent expression. She does it all. She is a star. Briefly touching on the writing, I really like the story. I like the idea of blending real-life true crime with fiction. I also really liked when they blended real-life elements in the story of Late Night with the Devil. It really makes the movie feel more real and tied in with our world. Also, the movie did have some funny moments that genuinely had me laughing from time to time, and it's got some quippy one-liners. I have to say, the movie does get pretty over the top, and I will admit, I think there was at least one moment where I found myself thinking, this is a lot, when will this end? It's a moment that comes and goes pretty early on in the movie, but it happened, and it was happening longer than I would have liked. But overall, all of these elements work within the world they've built in this trilogy. Now, let's compare X, Pearl, and Maxine. X puts the adult entertainment industry on display against a backdrop of graphic murders. It's a solid slasher. Pearl is an incredible period piece with slasher elements while also serving as a strong prequel. Finally, Maxine, it's a gritty mystery thriller set in the streets of LA. Each film is so unique, but they all work well together. They all share that slasher element and suspense. X and Pearl feel like smaller movies, and Maxine takes a turn. It's bigger and bolder. But is it better? Is it even as good? I will say it's different than the previous two, but I still think it fits in well. Pearl is my favorite of the three, with Maxine and X following closely behind. X is honestly my type of movie, you guys, the slasher vibe, the kills, the gore, but there is so much nudity and sex, and I get why it's there, but it was a lot. I love Pearl. I love that movie so much. Mia Goth's acting is unreal. Maxine delivers a lot of these elements that I really love overall. It's got the over-the-top gore, it's got the interesting characters, incredible acting, a stellar soundtrack, and we love a badass woman-led film. The nudity and sex, it's there, but it's just there in a way that's not front and center. I love all three of these movies, but I can see how Maxine, it can fit oddly at first glance because we do leave the farm, we leave that small town, it's very different, but this is Maxine's movie, and that's reflected in every frame. Now, let's wrap up with my final thoughts on Maxine. After discussing some standout elements, the real question remains, is it worth your time? In my opinion, yes. I really like this movie and all its over-the-top, wild-in-your-face moments. The movie is better the second time around, and you guys know I love to be transparent with you, so I have to admit, I definitely understood that character development more the second time around. It's still very much Maxine doing what needs to be done, sure, but the motivation is what I picked up on even more the second time around. Now, don't get me wrong, this is clear on a first watch, but everything was like sharpened for me when I watched it a second time. The quality of this movie is great. The production design, sound design, and cinematography are fantastic. The movie is a treat to look at. I love the colors, the camera angles, and again, the music is awesome. Everything works so well together, bringing this story to life. The acting is fantastic, and I actually like the ending or the reveal at the end. Was it predictable? Yes. But I was still invested because I was just so invested in Maxine and where her story was going. Of course, every movie has its pros and cons, and naturally, people just like what they like. We're going to get into some criticisms of the movie, and I'll share my thoughts. You don't have to agree with me, but as always, this is all just my opinion. Someone said their main criticism is that the final act seems like it stretches itself too thin. If you agree with that, let me know because I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I think overall the pacing is done well, and I can see how the third act has some fast moments. I think where it can spread thin is where it's taking its time, but I honestly didn't mind that, and I especially loved seeing into Maxine's mind. Another point of criticism is that the overall theme for the trilogy kind of gets lost in this movie. I think that's really interesting. Now, obviously, movies can have several themes, and part of it is what you take from it, right? I think the theme that we didn't talk about, and that's chasing success through resilience, is one that I can pin down that this trilogy shares. Finally, someone else pointed out that while Maxine is a star, we don't really actually see that. Her trauma is brought up in flashbacks, but never fully explored. She's a passive character with thin relationships with the people around her, so the kills feel kinda and the movie as a whole doesn't feel fully fleshed out. There is a lot to tackle here, and honestly, I can totally see where this person is coming from. Maxine is a star, but we don't really see it. Okay, understandable. I think we see this in several moments from the opening audition to the impactful ending. Even more so when you consider her being a star, it's just her being known. Everyone is going to know her by the end of this movie. Additionally, the movie isn't about her being a star. Okay, it is, but it's really that relentless pursuit. Nothing is going to stop her from reaching her goal. Maxine being a passive character is real. I agree with that. But it's because she believes, again, these women can save themselves the same way she did, the same way she continues to do. Honestly, it's like she's seeing the deaths happen around her, and it's giving, that sounds like a you problem. Until something happens to her, there's no reason to get involved. I can see how she's passive until she's not. The trauma in flashbacks. The way I don't need footage from the previous films or the film we're watching, we get it. We get the trauma, and the thing is, the movie actually does a good job of showing Maxine's trauma through scenes like the dark alleyway or when she's getting the life cast mold of her head made. The life cast scene, especially with such strong silent acting, the deep breathing and the fidgeting in the chair, and the technical aspects too, like blacking out the camera and the ticking of the timer. I was stressed, and I'm at home on the couch. I think the movie effectively conveys the trauma Maxine carries. I don't know why they gotta be using all these flashbacks and extra footage, but I can understand wanting it to be explored even further. We are wrapping this section up. The last point is the relationships Maxine has are paper thin, so the kills lack impact. I can see that. But is Maxine not fully committed to friendships? Because look what happened to her last group of friends, or at the very least, the people she knew, right? I also think there's some gaps in depth of friendship that we have to assume. Maxine is set 6 years after X. She has these close relationships, but what happened on that farm is still ingrained in her. I think if you like X and Pearl, then you'll at least enjoy Maxine. There's a lot to like about this movie. The visuals, the music, the acting. I picked out some pretty solid criticisms though too. I think. I try to anyway. So if you think anything I mentioned would take you out of the movie, or just ruin it for you, or maybe you didn't like X or Pearl, or you're just not interested, then absolutely skip this movie. I actually saw a few comments from people who were confused about the movies, so let's add a what to watch section real quick. Before watching Maxine, you'll need to watch X and Pearl. X takes place in the late 1970s and follows a group that are filming an adult movie. One of the stars of that movie is Maxine. The group is filming on a farm that belongs to an old woman named Pearl. Now, Pearl is a prequel that follows a young Pearl, and it's set around the late 1910s, 1920s, and don't get confused because she is also a star. Phenomenal acting. Both movies will bring you to Maxine, the sequel to X, that follows Maxine as she's working to break out of the adult film industry and become a star. I can see how this is confusing because Mia Goth plays both Maxine and Pearl, but hopefully that helps. If you're wondering if Maxine is scary, it is not scary. I saw some comments online talking about how it wasn't scary. I don't think X or Pearl were scary either, but I'm guessing the people that made these comments thought they were, so they were expecting Maxine to be too? I don't know, but I would say Maxine and the whole trilogy, they're really more suspenseful than they are scary. Also, this movie is very graphic when it comes to violence, blood, and just gore. There is also sexual content and nudity, and if you're wondering, it's not as much or as in your face as X. It's kind of just passing by, but it's definitely there. Have you had the chance to watch Maxine yet? If not, what's holding you back? Is it not your cup of tea, not your usual genre? Is it too graphic, or is it just not something that interests you? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts after today's episode. And if you've already watched it, I want to know your take. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or did you fall somewhere in between? Share your thoughts, opinions, and reactions in the comments below. I'm all ears. Overall, I really like the trilogy as a whole, and Maxine is a great addition. This is a fun and entertaining movie that has plenty of moments that you think will go one way, but they go in a completely different direction. It's gritty, and there's a great scene where Maxine is reading her script, and I love how it's intercut with another scene. Little things like that really elevate the movie. What I love most is how Maxine takes the foundation laid by X and Pearl and just pushes it. It's an homage to the era, and it's a unique take on the genre, while also staying true to the character, overall story, and themes that we've become so familiar with. Does the movie over-explain to the audience from time to time? Sure, but it isn't afraid to do something different. Maybe you're watching for the suspense, maybe the visuals, maybe getting to explore Maxine's journey more, or maybe you're just here for Mia Goth. Honestly, there's something in this movie for everyone, anyone just getting into these movies, or if you've been a fan of the trilogy. There's a lot to like about Maxine. It feels familiar to X and Pearl, while also carving out a path of its own. All right, you guys, before we wrap up, I want to talk about what movies I'll be sharing my thoughts on next. I'm still chipping at the movie block I got stuck behind, and we're starting to catch up. Next up, we have Longlegs and Trap. The movie I have tickets for next is Alien Romulus, which I have such high hopes for. It looks so good. Now, I'm aware of the timeline, but I'm just going to rewatch the entire franchise anyway because it really is my jam. Horror in space is my happy place, and I'm very excited to see that movie. If there's a movie that you're excited about and you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments below or send me a message on Instagram at a.rocket.review. Your suggestions are always welcome, and I love hearing from you guys. But for now, a huge thank you to everyone who has stuck around with me to the end of the video. You guys are all stars. Last week, I shared my thoughts on 2 movies. I didn't want to fall behind, so I shared my thoughts on Bad Boys Ride or Die as planned. Then I posted a poll to the community tab to leave the second movie up to you guys. And Deadpool and Wolverine won by a landslide. So I shared my thoughts on that one last week as well. If you haven't checked out one or both of those episodes yet, they are just a click away. And if you're watching today's episode on YouTube, you can find the links to both in the top right corner. For my lovely podcast listeners, both episodes are available for you as well. Your feedback is always appreciated, so please share your thoughts on YouTube in the comments below. And you guys, Spotify also added a comment section, so let me know what you're thinking. Do you agree with my take? Do you have a different opinion? Do you think Maxine was worth the wait? Like, was it what you were expecting? Do you think it's as good as X and Pearl? Let's get the conversation going. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. For those who prefer on-the-go listening, maybe while you're getting ready for your day, maybe while you're at work, follow me on Spotify so you don't miss out on our podcast exclusive episodes. And hey, if you're on Instagram, follow me at a.rocket.review for sneak peeks and behind the scenes content. And that's honestly really just me going to the theater and watching movies at home. Feel free to hop into my DMs with movie suggestions or to just chat about films. Your support honestly means so much to me, and your engagement helps our community grow. Whether it's on YouTube, the podcast, or on Instagram, your presence is greatly appreciated. So until next time, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, happy movie watching, and say it with me, you guys. I will not accept a life I do not deserve. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.